the city of the 80s. The men and women who make television in Detroit join together to celebrate the second annual Detroit Emmy Awards presentation.
It's almost impossible to dig deep on a daily breaking news story. When a fire hits, it's on the spot happening right now coverage that's required. And when it works, it's newscasting at its best. Nominees for outstanding achievement in daily breaking news stories are
Taylor Fire, WXYZ-TV, Charles Monroe, executive producer, and Fatal House Fire, WJBK-TV, Ron Trumbla, producer-reporter.
Within minutes, the explosion and fire had reduced this two-story frame to a pile of smoking rubble. Authorities suspect it was a gas explosion. Michigan Consolidated investigators were checking a feeder line. Somewhere in the debris, firefighters knew they would eventually find the body of 3-year-old Sienna, the daughter of Alondria Scott and Mark Savando. The parents are in satisfactory condition at Plymouth General Hospital. In fact, Mark called the family from there early this morning.
And the winner is Fatal House Fire, Ron Trumbla, WJBK-TV.
Within minutes, the explosion and fire had reduced this two-story frame to a pile of smoking rubble. Authorities suspect it was a gas explosion. Michigan Consolidated investigators were checking a feeder line. Somewhere in the debris, firefighters knew they would eventually find the body of 3-year-old Sienna, the daughter of Alondria Scott and Mark Savando. The parents are in satisfactory condition at Plymouth General Hospital. In fact, Mark called the family from there early this morning.
My mother was speaking to him, and he said that the house had blew up, and, you know, they was trying to get out, and they got out luckily, and they was looking for Sienna. They couldn't find her, you know. My mother
They said they tried to look for her, but
yeah,
they couldn't?
They couldn't find her. They heard her crying, but they, you know, the heat and everything, and with all the rubble, they couldn't get to her.
The explosion was also a close call for Shirley Bryant, who managed to escape from that house with her young daughter, and for Shirley Massengill, who was asleep in this house with 5 children.
It was one in the bed with me, and then there was 3 here, and it was 1 there.
Looks like you got them out just in time.
Yeah, well, when I come in the room, this wall here was then the window was shattered out. This wall was shattered out like it is now, and all these boards and stuff was laying across them and stuff, and glass was all over the floor. So I met them at the door as they was getting up. I guess the explosion kind of scared them, you know, and it scared me too, but we got out.
By 8 o'clock this morning, bulldozers were brought to the scene to clear the surface rubble, to give firefighters a chance to dig their way into the basement. At 9:15, Sienna's small body was found in the right rear corner of the house. She was found by firefighter Willie Johnson. I'm Ron Trumbla, TV2 Eyewitness News in Detroit. From the beginning, it was doubtful the hearing would ever come off. And for Nazi Party leader Bill Russell, it didn't. Before and after Russell and Klan leader Seth Kliphoff were taken out for their own safety, City Hall was the scene of unaccustomed violence. After 7 protesters were arrested, a semblance of calm was restored. It was then that we heard the following views.
We They will burn in Detroit if you permit them to march, and they won't have to rot and go to hell. They will experience the kind of pain we black people live with for centuries and even now. Don't turn them down. Let them march down Mack Avenue on the Lower East Side.
I put 3 years in the United States Navy. I was not over in that circuit. I was in the Pacific. But any of you haven't seen it and know how some people tremble when they see that goddamn swastika, then you know what you're talking about.
A refusal to grant the application for a parade permit at this time would be found unconstitutional as violative of the marchers' First Amendment rights.
Despite all of the emotional arguments on both sides of the issue, Detroit's Common Council is in an almost impossible dilemma. As today's hearing clearly demonstrates, there will be violence on the streets of Detroit August 23rd if the KKK and the Nazis are allowed to march. And if the permits are denied, most of the legal opinions clearly indicate that the city and the council will have denied their First Amendment rights and will undoubtedly wind up in court. Ron Trumbla, TV2 Eyewitness News, Detroit.
No! Nukes! No! 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 No!
The message was clear. Its bearers came by the thousands from towns and cities all across the state of Michigan. Consumer Power, they say, must halt all construction at its Midland nuclear plant. The anti-nuke fever is high now, certainly much higher than it ever was before the accident at 3 Mile Island.
We think the incident in Pennsylvania has raised the consciousness of the people in the country, and you know, it's an unfortunate accident, but at the same time, it's made people aware of the dangers of this very hazardous technology.
From Midland's Emerson Park, the demonstrators moved out just as the rain began to fall. Their march took them past the wary eyes of local police forces, past the eyes and cameras of curious townspeople, on through the center of town. The demonstrators represented a wide cross-section of people brought together by a common cause.
They're not safe. They never will be. They don't have the technology for it. They thought they did in Pennsylvania, but they didn't.
They don't know how to get rid of the waste, which will be have bad effects on our children, our grandchildren, and hard telling who else.
What happened to you?
I'm silver because I'm supposed to represent what would happen to people if they became radioactive. And this is to symbolize the expression, hell no, we won't glow.
I don't like nukes.
Why don't you like them?
They pollute the air, give people cancer.
Are you afraid of them?
Yeah.
Obviously, not everyone in Midland, or Michigan for that matter, was in sympathy with the demonstration. We found their viewpoint summed up in the opinion of one man who lives in Midland and draws his paycheck from Consumer Power.
All these people that are marching out here, they don't live here, they don't pay taxes here, they're not fundamentally involved. You ship them into town and make this look like that this is the community's attitude or Midland's reaction to having a plant here close to the city. And I don't believe that's the case.
What do you think the community's attitude is? What's your attitude?
My attitude is that there has to be safeguards, there has to be controls, but that this is more an emotional appeal, and it's not based on anything that's rational. It's not based on the data that we have for the last 35 years.
While this is clearly the largest anti-nuclear demonstration Michigan has ever seen, it is still but a small part of the groundswell that seems to be sweeping the United States. The anti-nukes are on the move, and 3 Mile Island is their battle cry. But today's goal was the Midland plant, taking shape across the cooling pond which separated it from the gathering crowd. A crowd that hopes to multiply and spread across the nation until Midland and every other nuclear plant is out of business, their reactors silent and cold.
When do we want it? Now! When? Now!
I'm Ron Trumbla, TV2 Eyewitness News, Midland, Michigan. At 14, Kurt Cizio's future stretched out before him, but it was cut short violently in the pre-dawn hours last Thursday. The grief his loss created for those who loved him is without measure, as is the contribution he might have made had he been allowed to live. Kurt was known to be a hard-working newspaper boy, a good student. St. Cunegunda Church filled to overflowing with family, friends, and the hundreds of Kurt's classmates at St. Andrew's High School. They came to say farewell, but found themselves listening to Kurt's own words as Father Francis Strozowski told them of a school composition Kurt started to write. The boy had asked him to correct it. They made an appointment to meet again when it was finished.
Kurt never came. But I guess this is what he wanted me to correct. He titled it, My Values. I value the family that I belong to most of all because I always have someone to turn to for help. I believe everyone has to have someone to share problems and happiness with. My family loves me, and I love my family.
Kurt was last seen early Thursday morning delivering his newspapers, but he was last heard from today. His words in an unfinished composition spoke to his parents of love, and those words, perhaps, eased their grief just a little. I'm Ron Trumbla, TV2 Eyewitness News in Detroit. Pope John Paul II? Meet Pope John Paul II. Well, the introduction may not be worded in quite that way, but next Friday the Pope will, in fact, come face to face with this larger-than-life replica. If he likes it, and he should, he may also grant an audience to the artist. Monika Himalewska, as skilled with a painter's brush and sculptor's trowel as she is with the loom, still prefers to weave her art. In the Pope's case, 17th century technique blends with fine hand-dyed wool and Monika's special magic to form a detailed tapestry as fine as a portrait painting. Monika also admits a little help from the Orchard Lake Seminary.
I received about 100 photographs from Orchard Lake Church, and I made one sketch of that, and then I enlarged that to the real scale, and I made the tapestry.
You didn't select the best photo?
No, I didn't. I think that selecting one photo is the mistake, because on one photo he can look chubby, on the other skinny, so I just try to select several of them.
Monika has had a lot to smile about since she immigrated from Poland a year and a half ago. She says her years in Warsaw were filled with uncertainty. I asked her if it was that uncertainty I saw in the face of her self-portrait.
I think so. Mm-hmm. Before I had my master's, before I knew that I would be able to come to America. So I think I showed that expression on my face.
Monika's work, including the Pope's portrait, will be on display this weekend as part of the first ethnic festival at Detroit's Old World Market. But first, it's off to Chicago, and hopefully, an audience with the Pope. I'm Ron Trumbla, TV2 Eyewitness News, Dearborn Heights. By prior agreement, the Detroit News printed 35,000 copies of the Free Press this morning, but apparently not many of them were delivered. Boxes were empty, newsstands were out, and for the first time, faces were visible in Detroit coffee shops.
They're generally buried behind newspapers, really, for the simple reason that this is where the news is. This is their first contact with whatever's going on in the day, so this is their primary interest. They come in there for coffee, donuts, and read their papers.
I'm lost without it because I read it every morning.
Usually I buy paper every day and I read it and I go through it and I look through all the sections, and I missed it this morning.
Outside the Free Press building, employees lounged, unsure of what to do next. They knew only that they would not cross the picket lines. Striking Teamsters on the line told me why the papers were not out.
Most of our people were out there when they arrived with the papers, and they, with their picket signs, and they were honored at the time.
And I know these trucks were moving around quite a bit. Were the guys in cars or what?
Yeah, they followed right behind them.
And then what did they do?
Threw up their picket signs in front of the racks and the dealers, and they honored them.
But the rolling pickets didn't stop all deliveries. Ed Citron in Southfield got 70 copies, but what he got was just a 16-page segment of what was to have been a big Sunday edition. His driver got through without a hitch.
He said he didn't have any problems at all. The only thing he said was people got to be nuts to spend 20 cents for this. And I kind of agree with him.
Apparently, quite a few of those Detroiters who love their free press with their morning cup of coffee have had to resort to a brief affair with the Detroit News. As a result, the news this morning was almost as hard to find as the free press.
I came at 6 o'clock this morning, and I'm all sold out of everything. They brought me some New York Times, and they brought me about 80 more.
Been trying to get your hands on any other news?
Yeah, since somebody cleaned the boxes around here.
Now, let me get this straight. You've been sending somebody to get news out of the boxes?
Yeah, out of the boxes.
Ironically, neither the abbreviated Free Press nor the full-size News had much to say about the strike in their morning editions. Ron Trumbla, TV2 Eyewitness News, Detroit.